Have you ever experienced a moment so surreal that it seemed as though time itself had paused, leaving you suspended between disbelief and awe? On a crisp Los Angeles morning at a bustling airport, a scene unfolded that would etch itself into the memories of every onlooker. A meeting so charged with quiet power, unexpected humor, and profound insight that it would forever alter the lives of those who bore witness. As the sun filtered through towering glass walls, illuminating polished floors and the rhythmic clatter of rolling suitcases, an air of anticipation mingled with the scent of fresh coffee and expensive cologne amid the ceaseless hustle. In first class, one man stood apart, not for an ostentatious display of wealth or designer labels, but for an unassuming grace and calm that radiated like a quiet beacon in a storm of pretension. Rumor had it that this man was none other than Michael Jordan. Dressed in a simple, well-worn plaid shirt, faded jeans that had clearly seen many adventures, and scuffed boots that hinted at a life lived off the beaten path, Michael exuded an aura of serene detachment. A battered backpack, casually slung over his shoulder, had weathered fabric that silently told stories of distant lands and forgotten memories, completing his look as a genuine star. His understated presence served as a counterpoint to the lavish designer ensembles swirling around him, while other travelers flaunted their status with glimmering accessories and carefully curated styles. Michael's presence was a masterclass in understated elegance, an unspoken reminder that true worth is measured not by outward appearance but by the quiet dignity that lies beneath. In the same first-class cabin sat Victor Harding, the embodiment of extravagance, who cut a striking figure in an impeccably tailored suit, with polished leather shoes gleaming under the airport lights and a fragrance seemingly engineered to command attention. Every gesture of his was calculated, as if rehearsed for a stage performance where wealth and status were the only props needed. It was no surprise, then, that his eyes fell on Michael with a mix of curiosity and thinly veiled disdain. "First class, huh?" Victor drawled with a smirk bordering on condescension, as if the idea of someone as unassuming as Michael could ever belong in this rarefied space. "You never know who might show up these days." Michael merely turned his head, his expression as calm and inscrutable as a placid lake at dawn. "Yeah," he replied softly, a single word hanging in the air like a secret invitation to a conversation that promised more than mere pleasantries. To Victor's chagrin, Michael's response was neither defiant nor dismissive. It was simply a matter of fact, as though the world were inherently full of surprises and no single encounter was worth disrupting the quiet flow of life. As the first-class atmosphere grew increasingly charged and the stage was set for a collision of worlds, the two men boarded the aircraft and settled into adjacent seats, a twist of fate neither could have anticipated. While meticulously checking his ticket for the umpteenth time, Victor muttered under his breath, "You've got to be kidding me," upon discovering that his neighbor was none other than the enigmatic Michael. A low chuckle escaped him, a sound laced with both disbelief and the thrill of a challenge, as he sank into his plush seat, the sweater he wore betraying a hint of inner turmoil. The ambient hum of the cabin, punctuated by polite announcements from the flight attendants and the clinking of champagne glasses, soon became the backdrop for a drama that would captivate every passenger. While most travelers were content to lose themselves in magazines or the glow of in-flight entertainment, Victor saw an opportunity to assert his dominance with a tone heavy with casual superiority. Leaning toward Michael, he asked, "So, what do you do for a living?" His question, more of a challenge than genuine curiosity, was meant to cement his own assumptions. Michael, adjusting the strap of his battered backpack, met Victor's gaze with an air of quiet amusement. "I work in film," he said, his voice measured and devoid of any need to boast. Victor's eyebrows arched in a mixture of surprise and condescension. "Oh, I see," he replied, his tone dripping with skepticism, as if dismissing Michael's achievements as nothing more than small-time commercials. "You know, it's interesting how people try to find their place. Sometimes certain spaces just aren't meant for everyone, like first class, for instance." His remark was accompanied by a self-satisfied laugh that echoed in the refined cabin, a laugh masking an insecurity hidden beneath layers of arrogance. Unperturbed, Michael maintained his serene composure. "I think we all have our place," he said, his eyes reflecting a wisdom that seemed to transcend the immediate circumstances. "Sometimes it's exactly where we are, whether by fate or by choice." The simplicity of his response, delivered with effortless grace, only deepened Victor's irritation as the plane taxied for takeoff. The subtle tension between the two men became palpable, drawing the attention of nearby passengers who exchanged knowing glances and hushed whispers. Soon, the in-flight service began. A flight attendant, her smile practiced as a well-rehearsed choreography, moved gracefully down the aisle, offering drinks with the precision of a seasoned professional. Ever eager to assert his status, Victor ordered a glass of champagne with a flourish. "Champagne, please." His tone was imbued with the expectation of admiration. When his turn came, however, Michael's order was refreshingly simple. "Water, please." Victor nearly choked on his own laughter. "Water?" he scoffed, unable to fathom that someone could choose simplicity over the extravagance of first-class indulgence. "Don't tell me you're going to waste the experience of flying first class with water." Michael's reply was as calm as a placid sea in the early hours. "Sometimes simplicity is enough," he said, his smile hinting at a deeper meaning. Though his remark was delivered in a few unassuming words, it resonated through the cabin like the gentle tolling of a bell, a reminder that the true value of an experience lies not in its superficial trappings, but in the quiet moments of reflection and authenticity. Victor's eyes narrowed, his mind racing to decipher whether this was an invitation to debate or a subtle dismissal of his carefully constructed worldview. "Yeah, I guess that works for people who settle for less," Victor retorted, his tone laced with a mixture of sarcasm and veiled contempt. "Not everyone is born to enjoy the best life has to offer." Michael took a measured sip of his water, his gaze never wavering, as if silently challenging the notion that success is something to be flaunted like a badge of honor. "Maybe the best is different for everyone," he finally replied, his words gentle yet resolute. The conversation, which had begun as casual sparring of words, gradually shifted into something more profound. Determined to reclaim his perceived superiority, Victor pressed on with a series of jabs that oscillated between philosophical musings and biting personal barbs. "You know, life is like flying first class," Victor began, gesticulating with his champagne glass as if it were a scepter of authority. "You work hard, earn your spot, and then you get to enjoy it. But some people, it seems like they got lucky." A ripple of murmurs spread through the cabin as fellow passengers, their eyes alight with curiosity and a hint of disapproval, listened intently to the unfolding debate. Michael, his calm expression unbroken, simply observed Victor for a few moments before replying, "Luck or hard work, we all end up in the same place when the flight lands, don't we?" His remark, delivered with quiet dignity, struck a chord in the room, as if challenging the very foundations upon which Victor's arrogance was built. Yet Victor shot back with a smirk, though his voice betrayed an undercurrent of uncertainty. "Some of us are simply on a higher level." He paused, as if savoring his own statement, before adding dismissively, "Real life isn't that simple." Michael's eyes twinkled ever so slightly, and he leaned forward just enough for his next words to carry the weight of final judgment. "The real world isn't made by those who shout the loudest, Victor," he said quietly, "but by those who act with quiet determination and treat others with respect." At that moment, the cabin lights dimmed slightly, a subtle reminder that the aircraft was now well above the clouds and far removed from the petty squabbles on the ground. The ambience shifted palpably, and the surrounding passengers began to focus their attention on the two men. Some exchanged nods of approval, while others could not hide their dismay at Victor's increasingly bombastic behavior. Just as it seemed that the verbal sparring might escalate into a full-blown confrontation, an unexpected twist sent shockwaves through the atmosphere. A sudden shudder ran through the plane, a momentary bout of turbulence that sent a ripple of unease through the cabin. The flight attendant, ever the embodiment of calm under pressure, paused her service to reassure passengers with a practiced smile. In that fleeting instant, as the aircraft swayed in a delicate balance between chaos and calm, something in Victor shifted. His confident facade cracked, and his eyes betrayed a flash of vulnerability, as if he were forced to confront the truth that, despite his outward display of superiority, he was as human as the rest of them, susceptible to fear, doubt, and the unpredictable whims of fate. When the plane steadied and the murmurs subsided into heavy silence, the conversation took on an entirely new dimension. Victor, now visibly unsettled, found himself at a crossroads. The world he had meticulously built, a world of status, accolades, and material success, suddenly seemed hollow in the face of the raw, unadorned truth that hovered in the air. Michael, ever the embodiment of gentle wisdom, continued speaking in a tone both kind and unyielding. "I'm not saying I didn't work hard, Victor," he said. "I'm simply saying that sometimes the loudest accolades aren't found in what you display, but in what you quietly give to others along the way. When you shout your achievements, you might be hiding your insecurities. But when you let your actions speak for themselves, that's when true success is revealed." His words, delivered with measured cadence, seemed to echo across the cabin, resonating with passengers who had long grown weary of the relentless pursuit of material validation. The debate had now transformed from a mere exchange of barbs into a philosophical confrontation, a battle of ideals that left the entire first-class section spellbound. Victor's face, once flushed with the heat of arrogance, now betrayed signs of inner conflict. The handsome exterior he had so diligently maintained was cracking, revealing a man wrestling with truths he had long ignored. "Who are we really?" Victor finally murmured, his voice tinged with both bitterness and dawning curiosity. "Are we defined by the glitter of our achievements, or by the impact we have on those around us?" His question, posed almost as a whisper, hung in the air like an invitation to look inward, a call to examine the soul behind the persona. At that moment, as if orchestrated by fate, the captain's voice came over the intercom, crisp and clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've reached cruising altitude and your connection in Tokyo is confirmed. Mr. Jordan, we wish you a pleasant journey." The announcement, casual yet reverberating with a hint of significance, sent another ripple through the cabin. For Victor, the revelation that his neighbor was not merely a traveler but a cultural icon, a symbol of a life lived on one's own terms, was like a bombshell. Michael Jordan's quiet words echoed in Victor's mind like an incantation, and suddenly every arrogant retort and dismissive laugh seemed insignificant compared to the quiet majesty of the moment. Michael acknowledged the announcement with a polite nod and a modest smile that spoke of a lifetime of experiences beyond the glitz of Hollywood. As murmurs of admiration and disbelief spread among the passengers, Victor found himself trapped in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. His mind raced, replaying every word of the conversation and every nuance of Michael's calm demeanor. There was a moment, a fleeting, almost imperceptible pause, when Victor felt the weight of every hollow boast he had ever uttered, every careless dismissal of another's worth. The quiet power of Michael's words exposed something raw and undeniable within him. For several long minutes, the cabin was cloaked in heavy silence as Victor grappled with an inner reckoning. Outside, the endless expanse of sky and clouds seemed to mirror his turbulent thoughts, a vast canvas upon which he could no longer ignore the imperfections of his carefully constructed facade. Then, with a trembling resolve that surprised even him, Victor slowly sank back into his seat, his gaze dropping to his trembling hands. I need to apologize," he admitted at last, his voice soft and laden with remorse, not for what he had said about Michael personally, but for the arrogance he had carried and the assumptions he had made. "I acted like a fool, trying to prove something that wasn't worth proving." Michael's expression remained as calm as ever, yet there was a flicker of understanding in his eyes, a silent acknowledgement that even the most hardened hearts can find redemption in the face of sincere regret. "I appreciate the apology, Victor," he replied quietly, his tone firm yet gentle. "More than that, I hope you take this as an opportunity to learn and understand that life isn't about proving your worth through what you own or how loudly you proclaim your success. It's about what you carry inside: compassion, humility, and the willingness to change." His words, imbued with wisdom, seemed to soothe the turbulent emotions within Victor. Even as other passengers looked on in a mixture of admiration and quiet relief, the once tense atmosphere gradually softened. Victor's earlier defiance gave way to introspection, and though he sat in silence, his eyes occasionally lifted to meet Michael's in a silent exchange that spoke volumes about the power of vulnerability and the possibility of transformation. Outside, the endless sky bore witness to this unexpected journey of self-discovery, a reminder that even among the clouds, where boundaries blur and differences vanish, true success is measured not by the glitter of superficial triumphs, but by the depth of one's character. In a surprising twist that no one could have anticipated, the conversation took yet another dramatic turn as the plane began its descent toward Tokyo. An unexpected announcement crackled over the intercom, a sudden change in flight plans due to an unforeseen airspace closure caused by a rare meteorological phenomenon. Passengers exchanged bewildered glances, and the cabin buzzed with a mix of concern and excitement. Amid this temporary disruption, the flight attendant, ever the embodiment of calm under pressure, began sharing humorous anecdotes about the quirks of international travel. "Well," she said with a playful grin that drew polite laughter even from the most anxious travelers, "if you ever thought first class was all about luxury and extravagance, today's unexpected detour is a reminder that sometimes life's detours are the best part of the journey." After all, who knew a little turbulence could add so much character to your trip? Even Victor couldn't help but crack a tentative smile at the attendant's remark, a brief, almost imperceptible moment of levity that punctuated the gravity of his inner transformation. Observing quietly from his seat with his trademark serene smile, Michael seemed to appreciate the irony of the situation. The unexpected detour, with its blend of anxiety and humor, underscored a simple truth, that life's true luxury lies in its unpredictability and that every twist of fate carries the potential for both challenge and growth. As the aircraft finally touched down in Tokyo, the tension that had gripped the cabin slowly dissipated, replaced by a collective sense of relief and the promise of new beginnings. In the terminal, as passengers gathered their belongings and exchanged farewell glances, Victor lingered for a moment, watching Michael as he made his way toward the arrivals area. Fans, emboldened by the authenticity of the encounter, approached him with admiration and curiosity, snapping photos and offering heartfelt thanks for the brief glimpse into a world where simplicity reigns supreme. With his gentle nod and genuine smile, Michael greeted each one, a stark reminder that true greatness often goes hand in hand with humility. Meanwhile, Victor, still processing the cascade of events from the flight, found himself standing alone in the bustling terminal. The grandeur of the airport, once a backdrop for his self-assured swagger, now seemed to fade into insignificance in light of the profound lessons he had learned at 30,000 feet. His mind buzzed with echoes of Michael's words, a refrain challenging everything he had believed about success, status, and the measure of a man's worth. Perhaps, Victor thought, he had been so busy trying to prove something that he forgot to ask, who am I really? What do I stand for beyond the surface? The realization was both humbling and liberating, a call to look inward and redefine success on a scale measured by character, empathy, and the willingness to grow. In that quiet moment of reflection, as the bright neon lights of the terminal flickered overhead and the distant hum of departing flights filled the air, Victor resolved to embark on a new journey. A journey not defined by the glitter of wealth or the applause of onlookers, but by a genuine commitment to change. He recalled the retired history professor's humorous quip about a coffee mishap, and despite the lingering sting of his own pride, a smile tugged at the corners of his lips. Perhaps, he mused, the best adventures are those that force us to confront the parts of ourselves we've long ignored. The memory of that flight, the charged debates, the unexpected turbulence that mirrored his inner turmoil, and the gentle wisdom of a man who needed no flashy credentials to command respect, would remain with him as a beacon in the chaotic journey of life. In the days that followed, Victor found himself musing over those transformative moments in both painful and enlightening ways. In board meetings and late-night conversations, he began sharing stories of that flight, not to boast about an encounter with a celebrity, but to underline a newfound belief that humility, self-reflection, and the willingness to laugh at one's own mistakes are the true marks of success. And so, as the city lights of Tokyo beckoned and new adventures awaited beyond the sliding doors of the terminal, the encounter between Michael Jordan and Victor Harding became more than a chance meeting. It became a quiet revolution in the hearts of those who witnessed it. A reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary moments occur in the most ordinary places. In a world that often measures worth by the flash of a designer accessory or the clink of champagne glasses, the simple act of ordering water in first class sparked a transformation that reverberated far beyond the confines of a single flight. In the end, what began as a subtle clash of philosophies evolved into a stirring narrative of personal growth, unexpected humor, and the raw authenticity that leaves an indelible mark on the soul. As Victor trudged away from the terminal, the hustle and bustle of international travelers fading into the background, he carried not only the memory of an encounter with one of the world's most enigmatic figures, but also the hope that he, too, could redefine his destiny. Perhaps the true measure of a man isn't in what he possesses, but in what he is willing to learn, embrace, and ultimately share with the world.